Halo Infinite is a game I never thought we would get. So this review is pretty much not going to be a multiplayer review, it's going to be a campaign review solely, just to let y'all know. And there might be some minor spoilers just in gameplay. I won't be talking about spoilers in this review. Halo Infinite, it's quite an interesting game. It's an intense journey, pretty much just this culmination of something that took about maybe I would say 5 or 6 years if I'm thinking correctly. This game has gone through some development hell. I mean, it's gone through a lot. Finally gotten it, especially after the 1 year delay, and honestly I think it's all worth it in the end, because Halo Infinite is one of the best campaigns I have ever played. Why I say it's not like it's a game I never thought we'd get, it's because this game is almost entirely open world. It's pretty much like an open world slash linear kind of experience. There's missions that take place in structures that are in the open world, but they're not like on there. You don't just do this open world task like you see with Grand Theft Auto or Witcher or any of those open world games. This game is kind of just like main story parts will be set in these more linear kind of levels that, you know, that are pretty much what Halo are. Take like a campaign like Halo CE and then just add a big open world to it, and that's kind of how I see it. And that's possibly the best kind of Halo we could ever get. If you asked me back in 2007, or like just maybe even, you know, when I first played Halo CE, that we would even get an open world Halo game, I would think you're a little crazy. I know that's kind of rinse and repeat kind of a saying, but honestly that's truly how I feel about Halo. And Halo Infinite is the only game in Halo that I feel like needed a open world title, because that's just kind of what Halo has always tried to capture with the open world. And they do it every time with the newer games. Like, they'll give you this grand scale, at least from Halo 1 through to Reach. But even then, like, they still felt open and everything, but we never got it to this scale. And it all pays off in the end, because every single little part of this open world is just engaging, incredible. It's filled to the brim with stuff to do. I pretty much have gotten to a point to where it's kind of 100%. I'm quite at a large percentage in the game. I can't quite say I'm all the way there, because there's a flaw in this that I will talk about in a bit. But let's go to the story. The story itself is absolutely incredible. Without really spoiling it, it was seamless. Things from going from the open world to those linear levels was seamless. Like, it transitioned well, and whenever you were done with one of those missions, you were put back in the open world, especially even at like a different section. So that's kind of like how this open world works. It's kind of like that GTA style, to where it's sectioned off. You unlock the section as you go on in the story, and you spend your time in a section, you know, complete things in that area, upgrade yourself, move on to the story, go to the next sections, kind of like that. And there's also a post game to it as well, so if you missed a few things, you can go back and get them. But that's going to kind of lead into my flaw. So this isn't really a spoiler, but this is honestly the only flaw I've gotten with Halo Infinite that isn't like major. It's not, or that is major, and it's not really a nitpicky. I have a few nitpicks, but they're all kind of spoiler story related. But the biggest major flaw I have is the fact that you can't replay missions. Even if you're just trying to go to that place in the open world, you can't go there. You can't fast travel to it and try to replay the mission. That is the kind of the only flaw I have, because for someone like me who's trying to 100% this game, I have just about everything in the game except for audio logs and some propaganda towers. But majority of the things in this are unlocked through the open world. But there's a few things where it's mostly just skulls. It's majority skulls. I got every skull in the open world, but there's some skulls that are locked behind the missions, and I can't go back to the missions and do them. If I wanted to go get those skulls, I'd have to start a whole new save file, and that's a bit annoying, even though I'm still going to go back and do it, because I at least want to get all the skulls and, you know, try to 100% it again on my own time. There's a lot of progress and a lot of stuff to do in this. They pretty much filled this to the world, especially even with just minor things. But my favorite things to do in this were the high value targets and taking out camps. Those were really cool to do. The distress calls were pretty cool, because sometimes it'd be wave based, or sometimes you'd just be setting Marines that were captured free and, you know, taking care of that stuff. But I think taking out camps might be my favorite thing, because kind of like doing that in open world games. Going on to where your tactical equipment is, I think this is probably the coolest like stuff that we've gotten, because when you go into the upgrades, you actually get like 5 upgrades. These are pretty much what we've seen in multiplayer, like thrusters, drop wall, threat sensor, shield core. Shield core I don't think is in, well, it's shield core is technically just over shield, but it's different in this game. But the grapple shot is pretty much literally the highlight of this game. I barely found myself using a warthog or a mongoose or any other vehicles because I had the grapple shot, especially because you don't unlock the wasp until pretty much post game, and that lets you, you know, go around the world much faster to collect the things that you've missed. But most of the time I really found myself using the grapple shot because it was so fun to use. Even like just going up against enemies, a large majority of my kills were because of the abilities you could pull off with the grapple shot. So the equipment is cool, but I think, you know, it's hard to balance other things with a grapple shot, but they still had their uses, especially threat sensor. I found myself using threat sensor a lot because it actually is a counter to a few enemies in the game. Drop wall is okay if you're pretty much out in the open. Drop one of these and you're pretty much good. The thruster is good for movement, but it wasn't like my favorite because the grapple shot just kind of outclassed it. And the shield core kind of did its own thing. It just gave you extra health pretty much. Honestly, the gameplay of the campaign, it was just insanely satisfying going through, feeling the smoothness of controlling Master Chief in this campaign was just utterly incredible. And I had a lot of fun just grapple shotting and, you know, driving vehicles around this map and exploring and, you know, taking out banished enemies, stuff like that. But anyways, back to the story. The cutscenes of this story, like the cutscenes were incredible. The animation of most of them are absolutely insane. Whenever you reach kind of the end of the game, everything just kind of starts going, and they start giving you all this information and all this stuff, and it becomes like kind of gripping and kind of heart-wrenching too, because like there's some things that were kind of left in the dark in previous Halo games, and most of that gets pretty much answered in this game, I believe. But honestly, at the end of the game, I found myself like just shocked, like just stunned by the way this story played out. 343 made up for every shortcoming they have ever had in previous Halo games like Halo 4 and Halo 5. They really showed that they learned lessons and they care about Halo, especially the story. The multiplayer, I think, needs a bit of work, but the campaign in itself, that's where all their heart was, and I fully appreciate that that's where it was, because this is one of the best single players I've played in my time. Like, there's a lot of good single players out there, but this one was just fantastic, honestly. It was gripping all the way through. The gameplay was really fun. It's very satisfying, especially using, like, unlocking cool weapons that you can get. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be about it. This game is my game of the year. Easily a 9.5 out of 10 for me. Again, there's some nitpicky things with the story and some of the art style choices that I'm like, okay, that I'm pretty mad with. But this game ultimately reminds me of Halo Combat Evolved. It's so weird to say that because the last Combat Evolved-esque game we got was Combat Evolved back in like 2001 when everything started. So 343 did a fantastic job. I give this game, yeah, a solid. I usually don't do ratings, but I have to give this game like a 9.5 out of 10. It's easily my favorite game of this year. So let me know what you guys think of the story. If you want to see a spoiler review, I will probably do one in the future. I probably have to play the story again, just like get my memory brushed up on a few things. But honestly, yeah. So I highly recommend you play this game. If you have Game Pass, do yourself a favor and play this game, this campaign. Just be there. If you're a Halo fan, I hope you liked it too, as much as I did. That's going to be about it for today's video. I love you guys. I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video. See you.